second hour of the WINY Talk Show. Call 928-1350 to be heard. Telephone lines are open, so call now.
Welcome back to the WINY Talk Show. 10:08 as we begin our second hour, and we welcome Ned Lamont, Democratic candidate for governor. Ned, thank you so much for coming in studio to talk to us here directly, talk to our listeners in northeastern Connecticut directly. Hope you had a nice ride up here because we've got a lot to talk about. Thanks for coming in.
Dave, was beautiful. What a drive.
Fantastic. Ned, we talk a lot on this show about what goes on in Hartford and the struggles that the state of Connecticut is facing. And I've asked all the candidates this question, so I'd like to start with you with this question as well. It's a rough time in Connecticut. Why do you want this job?
Because it's a rough time in Connecticut. I want to solve it. I'll take all the blame for the tough decisions. I'll hand out the credit to anybody that we can, and I think that's how we turn the corner. I'll be a very different type of governor. My door will be open. I will listen. I work well with Republicans and Democrats. I have the support of labor. I respect labor. I want labor to be at the table. I come out of the business world. I'd be the first governor who started a business and created jobs. I can work well on both sides of the aisle, and I think that's the attitude you're going to need to turn this around. And I got one other thing going for me. I did it on a TV ad the other day. I turned 64. So I don't care. I'm not looking for the next big gig. My reputation is, I'm okay with who I am. I'm okay with what I've done. I just want to solve this thing. I want to make sure that this is a great place, for our kids. They got opportunity here, and maybe our parents can afford to stay here. That's what I want to do.
I was at the Connecticut Association of Realtors debate. They put on a fantastic event, and there were a lot of great issues that were raised at that debate. There was a lot of discussion about cities in that debate. And now that you're here in northeastern Connecticut, what do you think are the issues that are facing rural Connecticut that are different than what cities face?
Well, first of all, I'd say we're one small state, so I can say I'm a champion for our cities, as I said that night, but not at the expense of our small towns. And I don't think we need politicians that pit our towns against our cities. We're in this together.
Sometimes that's the way we feel in northeastern Connecticut, that we're pitted against Hartford and bailouts, and then we're left here in northeastern Connecticut. And I would imagine the folks in Litchfield County may feel the same way, and saying, what about us?
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Hey, you haven't been here. Well, there are 169 towns. I'm getting everywhere I can as fast as I can. But let me tell you, our rural towns, Putnam, Southeast Connecticut, this is such a big part of Connecticut. And it is for a whole variety of reasons. One, really smart people, a lot of PhDs. You got UConn. There's things that we ought to be able to leverage there. Two, there's some good news, by the way. Going a little further afield, but when I took on Dan Malloy, I challenged him 8 years ago. We would have turned this state around. But here we are 8 years later. But 8 years ago, people were lined up at the unemployment office. They were desperate. They didn't know what tomorrow might bring. There's some good news now. We do have tens of thousands of really good jobs that we can't fill because we're not training people for those jobs. That includes Electric Boat. That includes Pratt. That includes Sikorsky. So I'm going to do everything I can to train people for those jobs. So these are Connecticut jobs for Connecticut people. I'll also fight for rural Connecticut. I'll fight for our farms. I was in Durham the other day, and there was a dairy farm. I think it was the oldest dairy farm in town or in the region, and it was going under. The big mass dairy farms in Wisconsin was eating their lunch. And farming is part of the soul of Connecticut. It's good for our environment. It's good good for tourism, and it's who we are. I put it in reverse order there. So we got to think about, some have mentioned to me, Ned, speed up the damn Department of Agriculture. They take too long. I'd like to be able to convert more of my farm over to commercial hemp, industrial hemp. It's easy to do. There's a real market for it. Our size farms are ideally suited to it. And that's the type of thinking you need to bring back these towns. I give you one other idea. If I were, in Putnam, I would say a Wi-Fi hotspot right in downtown. Make that free available to everybody that goes through this part of town. I know that there are more young people that say, hey, look, I don't have to be in Providence or Hartford more than 1 or 2 days a week for my job. If I had really good Wi-Fi access, I could work right here. And you say, okay, well, who's going to do that? Who's going to pay for it? Connecticut's bankrupt.
Right.
Well, how about the big cable operators? They operate with a 15-year franchise. You maybe know I used to come out of that business. I really used to compete with them. Maybe a condition of your next franchise renewal, free Wi-Fi, downtown Putnam. Keep the millennials here. Let them grow their businesses right here.
So working with businesses on that front to come together, you mentioned during the debate, GE leaving. There's a concern of not only businesses leaving, but brain drain. How do we, of our young folks moving out, going away to school, and then not coming back, how do you bring that back, and how do you pay for it?
I think it all starts with jobs. As I said, first guy to start a business. Maybe that's not a bad person to lead a state that's having a hard time starting businesses. I'm a big believer in small businesses. You can start your small business anywhere. It's nice to have access to transportation. It's nice to get rail or air so you can get in and out. But no longer do they have to be in that major metropolitan center 5 or 6 days a week. So there's an enormous future for communities like this if we play our cards right. And then you just play to your strengths. I mean, if, I can tell you down in Stamford area where I am, maybe that's fintech and digital media. You think of the greater New Haven area, that's healthcare. You think the areas around here from, Pratt to Electric, that's advanced manufacturing. And all the hundreds and hundreds of small suppliers and small manufacturing folks that feed them. So play to your strengths. This is what we've got. And secondly, in the electronic world, with digital, you can do anything you can in Brooklyn right here in Putnam if you have the right internet access.
Connecticut Community College consolidation. That is one issue that we've been talking about here since the start of the year. Winnebago Valley Community College, when you talk about jobs, it is the hub for us here in northeastern Connecticut to train people for the jobs that are specific to us here in northeastern Connecticut. And that was in threat of maybe being closed. We're not quite sure exactly where the plan went with Marco Jankian. But if you're faced with that question again, if you're elected governor, how will you address that? Is that something that you'd like to see, community college consolidation?
No. Let me tell you what. What about all of our community colleges? I want them locally controlled. But you answered the question yourself. You want them locally controlled so they know the local market. They know the local business leaders.
This is what our audience had a hard time wrapping their head around when it was proposed. Why would we take away that local control when the local community college is the one that's saying these are the types of jobs we need for our region? That's what left us all scratching our head.
It leaves me scratching. I mean, you want folks trained for the local opportunities there are here, and who knows that better than the head of the local community college? So I like local leadership. Look, Jankian, in his plan, if he said, look, we can share some services when it comes to purchasing or digital, IT, but that all makes sense to me. Take the back office, do that in the most consolidated way. I want to do that in Hartford. I think I can greatly bring down the cost of delivering things. But local control is what makes Connecticut, and that's true of our community colleges as well.
Let's talk a little bit about transportation, because that's another issue for us here in northeastern Connecticut. We've got the north-south route with 395 and, of course, Interstate 84. But that east-west access has come up among our listeners as to we don't have enough of that, and therefore northeastern Connecticut gets locked out on the transportation front. At least that's the perception. Fill us in on your transportation plans, and I suppose, does that include tolls for you?
So, you have to think about what are Connecticut's advantages. And one of our advantages is we have a pretty darn good location. I mean, I don't want to say we're somewhere between Boston and New York, but we have easy access to some of the biggest markets in the world. And right now it's gridlock. And you mentioned GE earlier. When GE left and everybody wrung their hands and started blaming each other, I did get the leaders from GE together, and they said your transportation system is a mess. They used a stronger word. And I cannot get my people to work. And that was down in Fairfield County, but we have the same issues everywhere. And I've got to bring how we pay for our transportation system in the 21st century. Because everybody knows I need more frequent rail service in Shoreline East. Everybody knows that the gridlock is getting heavy. The tractor-trailer trucks are filling up our roads. You know, so darn it, let's do what they're doing in Rhode Island, right down the way. What Gina's doing, let the big tractor-trailers pay an electronic toll for the right to use our roads, right to use our bridges. Help us rebuild those. Help us fix those. You know, that will speed up transportation and make it safer as well. That allows a little more money for more frequent rail and bus service, so that folks that, you know, don't have a car can get around and do things. I got to pay for this stuff. I mean, the Republicans are great. I'm going to eliminate the income tax. I'm not going to have tolling, and here's a pony. But that's not the world I come from. You know, I got to deliver on my promises. So if everybody has a better idea, Dave, I'm all ears. But right now, I'm going to exact tolls on those big tractor trailers, and they use that $150 million a year to upgrade transportation.
Our listeners have been concerned when they hear we're going to take that money, put it aside, and only use it for transportation. They're skeptical that money is going to be, or that money is going to remain and used for transportation and not for something else. How do you address that?
I'm not those previous governors. You know, when I look you in the eye, here on radio, I mean, you're going to know that that's where the money goes. Comma, I don't trust them either, so let's put it into a lockbox, you know, with a key on it. And that's 90% good, not 100% good. We thought we had, you know, the lottery, all that money's supposed to go to education. So I share people's skepticism, but more broadly, I got to tell you, who wants to send a dime to Hartford? You think the money all gets frivoled away? I've got to give people confidence their money is being well spent. I got to give confidence that I'm the guy that's going to be fearless when it comes to shaking up how we deliver services, how we streamline services, how we bring down costs. And if I ask you for a dime, I want you to know that dime is going to go to job creation and better opportunity for your kids.
What sorts of other industries do you think Connecticut could attract? Or do you have some goals for that?
The first thing I would do, because I can do this immediately, is work at all the unfilled jobs we got right now, which I mentioned in terms of advanced manufacturing, digital media, healthcare. But these are not all fancy jobs. I mean, I can tell you, you go to the trades, you talk to the plumbers, the pipe fitters, the metal workers. All those guys are beginning to age out. They really want us to have a VOTEC system in our high school, you know, right here, so that a lot of kids know that that's going to be a good paying job when they graduate. You know, I was in a number of these VOTEC schools. The programs are packed, and there's a lineup there. The other part of the state, Waterbury, there's a big career high school there. Everybody is lined up for the right to do that, and I want to work with labor to help them provide the training for these jobs going forward. We're an old state. We have a lot of rebuilding to do. That's a lot of good work for people.
But those mill jobs aren't going to come back. So what does replace them? That's a question that we've asked for years and years and years on this show. What does replace that old mill across the street? We're trying to figure out what may come next with that. But it's not going to be a mill industry that comes back to that. So everybody, I think, in our little towns are asking, what can we do with those buildings besides housing, for instance? But what can we do with them? What can we refill them with and get them bustling again with?
I'm looking at the mill right across the street, and it was me. I'd make that a tech incubator. I'd have the highest speed data access around anything you can get in.
So it's technology.
I think so, because you can be anywhere and do that work. And you can start up fintech and financial services and Bitcoin. All you need is energy and technology. I can do that right there in that mill we're looking at across the street. You have some of the best, you have some of the smartest, we are saying most PhDs anywhere in the country. You got the brain power to do it. What you need is the access that opens up Southeast Connecticut to the rest of the world. And we can talk about roads and bridges and airports, but I really believe that the internet and high-speed internet makes Putnam as relevant to the 21st century as any of those big cities can boast about.
Let's take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, I want to talk about education cost sharing. Our towns here struggle to make their education budget, so let's talk about that and a number of other things. We'll open up the telephone lines as well. 928.
Sign up now!
Be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Call the WINY Talk Show now and offer your opinion and ideas at 928-1350. Call now and be heard.
Operator, could you help me place this call?
Welcome back to the WINY Talk Show. It is 10:27, and joining us in studio, Ned Lamont, Democratic candidate for governor, running in the August 14th primary. And Ned is here to talk to us about issues that are facing the next administration and to take your calls. So why don't we get to the telephones? You are on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. Excellent day. I just have a couple of questions. First, you should have ran for governor the last time instead of being beaten in the primary. You were the best candidate.
Thank you.
And so that we'd be in a lot different shape as it was that. And people should remember that the Republicans never deliver ponies, even though they promise.
Charlie, do you have a question? Because I want to get to as many calls as we can.
Quick question.
Okay.
Number one, as governor, will you stop sending high-tech jobs to the 91 corridor and skipping northeastern Connecticut? Because right next to us is a town called Smithfield that has been in Rhode Island has been very successful at picking off pharmaceutical companies, not the research, but the manufacturing, and Fidelity for their back office operation. And my other question is, hopefully you'll think about the truck toll. As you know, in Rhode Island, they just went into litigation over that.
All right, Charlie, let's let Ned answer those questions. Thanks for ringing in this morning.
Bye.
All right.
Well, Charlie, on the truck tolls, we'll let Rhode Island figure out the litigation, and we'll learn from whatever happens next year. But to the bigger point, and as Dave and I were talking about, this should be an amazing area in Northeast Connecticut for a lot of the digital startups and new business creation. Because you don't have to be in a big city anymore. You don't have to be on the I-91 corridor. You don't have to be in Boston or New York. If you have a really good internet access and pretty good transportation in and out for 1 or 2 days a week if you got to get to that major hub, this can be an amazing, low-cost, interesting, beautiful place for you to start up your business. When I say low cost, again, we're looking right across the street. We're looking at one of the old mills. Get that retrofitted, make that a tech incubator of some sort. I think there's a great future for our rural areas in addition to agriculture.
All right, Charlie, thanks so much for ringing in. Let's get to our next telephone call. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
My question is this. It's beyond doubt that this state is in horrible shape in as far as economics is concerned. We're at critical mass, and we've been there for a good many years now. And everybody keeps on doing all kinds of things that isn't solving anything. How would you balance our books versus monies coming in and monies we're spending?
Yep, that's the probably $2.4 billion question, because that's the size of the shortfall we have.
That's what I want to know. If I'm going to vote for you, I want to know how you're going to do that.
Number one, I I look hard at the spending side. As I said, I took on a cable TV industry and I delivered a better service at less cost. I do that with technology. I do that with IT. I do that with better trained workforce. Let me move them around. But most importantly, I got to give you confidence that every dime going to Hartford is well spent. Two, we got too many departments. We need a lot of consolidation, especially when it comes to the back office, is the second way we can save. Thirdly, I have the support of labor. I'm proud to have the support of labor, and I don't blame the teachers and firemen and cops and state employees for the pickle we're in when it comes to our state employee pensions, but everybody's going to have to be at the table as we work through this. When it comes, for example, to the teachers' pension fund, it took us 30, 40 years to get in this mess. It's going to take us some time to get it out. Flatten out those payments. Make sure that going forward we make changes in terms of how people receive their pensions. Maybe put the lottery into the teachers' pension fund. So the things we can do where we honor our commitment to our people without burdening our taxpayers. But most importantly, and I put this in reverse order, is jobs. We've got to grow the tax base. We don't need more taxes, but we need more taxpayers. And as I look at the empty mill across the street here, that's what happens in a town like Putnam, where you have a diminishing grand list and fewer and fewer people are paying a higher and a higher tax. And that's true of the state of Connecticut. We haven't really added any new jobs in the last 10, 20, 30 years. That's why I make the case yet again that I think probably somebody who started a business and created jobs is what we need to turn the state around. But I want you to know one thing. Nobody's going to be more fearless than me when it comes to shaking up how we do business in Hartford.
All right, John, thank you so much for the telephone call. Let's move on to our next telephone call. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Ned, Killingly Democrats were the first ones, I think, to endorse Susan and yourself.
Love Killingly.
Yeah, and, well, we all love Susan, too. We've had for a long time. But the teachers' pensions funds, just one statistic, it only pays our teachers the lowest amount in the state, which is nothing to brag about. But that pension system, we should pay about $130 per person in Tony, and we're probably paying $250 for teachers' pensions because we're lumped in with Greenwich and everybody else. What Malloy tried to do with this 1/3 teachers' pension, the state somehow has to get rid of paying for everybody's pension because the smaller towns are getting stuck with royally. But that's something which is a political suicide for somebody to do that. So I just want you to look at it. The teachers' pension, some way, the smaller towns that pay their teachers a lot less than Greenwich and Stamford and all that, we're paying the pension is all lumped in one sum. So the lower town, even though we're the lowest town on the ladder paying teachers, we're paying the same amount of pension into the state, and that's going to be corrected somehow, and I don't know how you're going to do it.
So it's an equity question.
It's an equity question.
Thanks, Jack.
Let me answer that in two ways. One, remember, teachers don't even get Social Security, so you were really dealing with somebody's hope and future and well-being. But I think on the equity question, let me just say this. Maybe the state of Connecticut, look, I don't want to push pension obligations, 1/3 of it to towns. I just think that bankrupts towns, and it was a terrible idea. But maybe you say, look, we're going to pay teacher pensions up to a certain amount. We're going to guarantee that in the state of Connecticut, and that's going to be our obligation. But those rich towns that have a much higher pension for their teachers, they're going to be responsible for that incremental amount. So maybe that's the way that we bring down the relative cost for folks here in Putnam, and some of the richer towns will have to do a little bit more.
We can't talk about the economy and jobs enough, but I do want to shift the conversation a little bit to another item that I heard at last week's debate with the Connecticut Association of Realtors. School safety came up as part of the gun control question. And after Parkland, Florida, we talked extensively on this show about what does the state do and how far ahead of the curve or behind the curve in some issues of gun control. But one thing that the listeners came back with was, how do we make our schools less of a soft target? And at one point in our state budget, there was money for schools to come forward and ask for funds for bulletproof doors, items to help stop, to put items in front of doors, barricades, schools become less of a soft target?
When you're educating your child, that's got to be the safest place in the world, and they know they can go there with that sense of security. And after Newtown, after Sandy Hook, there's a real worry in a sense that they can't count on that. So look, when it comes to reinforcing doors and the such, I have a lot to learn on that, what we can do to make this a harder target, not a softer target. But I'll tell you what I do want to do. We've taken a lot of our counselors out of our schools. We've taken a lot of folks money from mental health. I want people in those schools watching what's going on, reporting back to parents, working with kids so we know anybody who might be at risk. I mean, that's the other side of violence, is the folks that are sometimes tripped. And I want to make sure that we're taking care of them in the right way that also keeps our schools a lot safer.
Because a lot of our folks did say, and we even talked to our local delegation to Hartford, is there money still available? And there was a question about whether or not there is money available for schools that want to add cameras and those sorts of things. And I think that was the one area that we actually found some agreement on. When you talk about gun control, it obviously splits and everybody goes to their separate corners. But that was one place I thought that our listeners were coming together on, that might be something that they could all support. Is that something that could be put into the budget?
That's something I would definitely look at. Look, I was a volunteer down at Harding High School in Bridgeport. This was 20 years ago. We walked in through a metal detector. That's not where I want to go. I want our schools to be open and welcoming. I want the community more involved in our schools. And I want people of faith. And I want people of parents. And I want folks who started businesses, others to be able to get involved in the school. That's what I did in my classroom. Gave these kids some sort of a role model that they could look up to and say, maybe I could be like this person someday. So I got to figure out what is the right balance there. But I'm not going to compromise safety.
Okay, all right, let's move on to our next telephone call. You're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to speak to Ned Lamont.
You bet. You're on the air.
Okay, Ned, you talk about a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues here in the state of Connecticut. But let's face it, the state of Connecticut is dead broke. And what is the main issue? The main issue is the fact that we've been overpaying our public employees over the past 20 to 30 years, far in excess of in the private industry. And what are you going to do about bringing these contracts under control, bringing the wages down, getting rid of the pensions? The pensions are going to kill us, and they got to be renegotiated down. What would you do about that?
Thank you, caller.
I think that everybody hired over the last 5-10 years have given back a lot, so that those salaries and pensions are more in line with what you see in the private sector. I think that's not what the problem is when it comes to the fiscal crisis in Connecticut. It's those folks who are hired 20, 30, 40 years ago, and you can say they were paid too much. They would say, I worked under a contract and the governor didn't put any money to pay my pension. So those are the folks, that 70-year-old teacher, that we've got to figure out a way to deal with her in an honest and fair way going forward, and make the pension payments and also make it affordable for the state. And we gave a couple of ideas earlier in the show about how we can stretch out those payments and reduce the overall cost burden to the taxpayer. But I think you should feel a little more confident that the latest round of hiring, and to tell you the truth, we don't hire many people anymore, so it's more on paper, Dave, but at least on paper, when it comes to salary, when it comes to pension, it's a shared 401k, so it's defined contribution, not just the old benefit plan. I think you'll be surprised at how much change has taken place in the last decade.
Ned, we know you have other stops here in northeastern Connecticut, so before we let you go, for voters that are interested in learning more about your candidacy, how can they do that, and what would you like them to know in preparation for the August 14th primary?
I'd like them to go to nedlamont.com. That tells you, A, where I'm going to be going, where our team is going to be going, where Susan Beisowitz is going to be going. We'd love to meet you. I don't get up here enough, so when I get up here, I'd love to see as many people as I can. And I want people to remember that, A, there's a primary on August 14th. I don't set the date. It's the worst possible date for a primary. I can't figure it out, but here it is. It's August 14th, and if a lot of people get up and vote their conscience, vote their heart, who gives us the best chance to make the fundamental changes we need to turn the state around? I think we'll do well in that primary. If very, very few people turn out, you never know what's going to happen. And then we're going to focus on November. But I am a believer in this state. I want to make you a believer in this state. I got to make sure the business guys know that this is a place they can grow and expand and hire. And I'm going to make sure we have a transportation system and a skilled workforce ready to help them take off.
All right, Ned, please keep in touch with us on the talk show. And if everything goes according to your plan and you're elected governor, we hope that you'll come back here and check in with the WINY audience on a regular basis.
I love being back. I promise you that.
Very good. Ned Lamont joining us here in studio. We'll take a commercial break and we'll resume with more of the talk show right after this.